Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be writing the addition function of a calculator and we'll do that in C programming language. We'll write it function wise. So this is how we're going to do it. We'll ask the user first to input the total number of numbers he wants to add, and then we'll use a for loop to loop from 0 to that number, and for each iteration, for each loop, we'll ask the user to input the value and then we'll add it to the previous value that we had. And so we'll start from 0. Then when the user input a value, add it to 0. He enters the next one, we'll add it again to the previous one, and so on till we finally output whatever sum we get. And that will be the output to the user. Now, we'll write it function wise, we'll write it in terms of functions. I intend on building a basic calculator in C that is for basic operations, for addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. And so stay tuned because after this addition, we'll update it in our next video with multiplication, division, square root, quadratics, and so on. Now this is in C. This is for beginners. As time goes by, we'll go to Python where we can write it more advanced, can write it in a more advanced way. So I will need the first thing I will need the function. I'll write the function and the return type of the function should be a float because the user must now always input an integer. Most of the times users input decimal numbers and so on. And I can call the function name add. Yes, it will take no parameter for now. Take no parameter. So in here I'll need my variables. I will need first the data container that will be storing the values that the user is putting in, and it's also a float. And I'll call that one result. And then I'll also need to store, also need a data value, a variable that is going to store the values as the user is putting in, and I'll call that one input. I want for the for loop I'll need a counter, and that's an integer I. And for the total number of items that the user wants to add, it will also be an integer, and so I'll call that len. And so I just need to ask the user to input it. I have to ask now the user printf. So I'll ask the user to input the total number of values he wants to add. So I can say, please, sometimes it's good to be polite. Please enter the total number of items you wish to add. Yes. And so that is it. So you need to store, as the user will input, you need to store, and that's the function of scanner function. So the place value there is is percentage z. The placeholder there is percentage z because it's an integer. So I'll point it to the location len. That does the trick. And so we have gotten the total number. Now our job now is to loop from 0 to that number. So that's where the for loop comes in. Start from 0. Other people may start from 1. Yeah. I think starting from 0 is good. So start from 0 and then we go all the way to 1 better number, and so that will be yes. And then our incrementation, yeah, that's it. And so inside this loop, what we'll be asking the user to do is that he should enter the current number. So I'll just say, I'll ask the user enter, I'll just say enter value. Yes. And I think I can write like this. And then what I'll do, I'll need to store that value somewhere. and I'm storing into my input, I remember it is a float. Yeah. We take float because it is advantageous. If you go and write for an integer and the user wants to input and user input a float, the sum will be faulty. Yeah, the answers that the computer will give will be faulty. Will not be what we expect. So we use float because float include both integers. Yeah. So and that will be percentage f. The placeholder then now becomes percentage f and will point you to the location input, the variable input, and that is it. And so now for each loop, what we're going to do is that for the initial result, the final result now will be the initial result. And I forgot to set this one to zero. Well, it doesn't really matter, but I want to set it to zero so that you can understand why. So that for the final result now will be equals to, let's put an S here. Final result will be equals to the initial result plus the input, the value the user has given. That does the trick. So that for the next one, it will just be like we'll bundle out every other thing that we have done for this one. I'll add it to the value the user is going to input. Yes. And that's all we actually need in that for loop. So when the user first of all starts for the first looping, you ask the user to input a value, and that value will be stored in input, and input is going to be added to the initial result, which is zero, and stored into result again. Now for the next iteration now, the counter update. So for the next iteration now, you will still ask the user to input a value. You store that value in input, and then I will come and now add that value to the initial result. The initial result now is that previous result for the first iteration that we had. And so you see that every time results keep updating till finally the user will should have added all the numbers that he wanted to add at first. And so now what we can do now, after we have exited the loop, now we just have to print the value of result, because result now has the sum of all the values that user has been inputting. Yeah. So I'll say the sum of all the values you entered is, now it is remember the placeholder is percentage f because it is a float, and that will be result. Okay, then. So we return zero because we initially said the return type there is a float. If we do not want to return the zero, we'll put void here. Then we can, yes, we can now remove the return zero. Yeah, because of this float here, we'll have to return a zero. Yeah, that's the return type. And that is our block of code. This is our addition. Now what we have to do now is to write now our main program. Now what we're going to do is that after I've written our main program, we'll now just call the add function. So this is how our main program goes. Say int main. Yeah. And open our brackets, our braces, and from there. Now we'll now just need to call our add function. So a smart person will just do like this. That does the trick. Now you see it. Now I would like to use void here because I'm not returning anything actually. This function is not returning anything. It's just calling a certain function that does all the whole job. So I just allow it like that. And that is my main function. But at least now it will call this function up there. So we can run this and here's it. Please enter the total number of I had to add 5 numbers. Enter value. Let me say from 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see it has told me the sum of all the values I inputted that I entered was is 15. And so our program works well. And that is it. And this is for the add function, guys. In the next video, I'm going to add multiplication. And after that, I'm going to add square root, logarithmic functions, uh, matrices, and so on. And so this is for beginners, and I hope you enjoy the lesson. Please, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So that next time I'm going to update this calculator, you'll be the first person to be notified. Thank you. Until then, be blessed.